Humans and animals can get along great, but sometimes animals are unpredictable. Sometimes even the most normal pets like cats and dogs can turn on their owners. And at other times, people have terrifying and exotic animals you really should not domesticate. Here are some of the most wild times people had scary pets and soon regretted it. Wolf Pack. Sandra L. Poivison was a resident of Pittsburgh, USA. She was kind of like a crazy cat lady but for wolves. She absolutely loved her wolf pack of 9. She would look after them, play with them and feed them every day. She did not care what people thought despite the animals being dangerous and non-domesticated. Sandra once told her neighbor that her wolves loved her unconditionally. But soon after this, her 9 wolves ate her. 50-year-old Sandra had devoted her entire lives to her wolf pack. Her house and backyard was configured to their desires. For example, in her backyard was a gigantic plastic playhouse, and even a replica igloo so the wolves would feel at home. However, just because you take a wild animal out of their environment does not stop them being a wild animal. Sandra learned this the hard way. Despite her backyard and house being large, it was not large enough for the 9 wolves. This caused them to act out in a vicious way. Sandra would often feed her pet wolves roadkill deer. But despite her efforts to make her Pittsburgh home similar to their natural environment, it did not work. And for this, she paid the ultimate price. Tiger activist. Everyone remembers the Netflix series Tiger King. It featured Carole Baskin, an activist who was trying to make it illegal for certain people to own exotic pets. She got a lot of negativity from that, but after hearing this story, maybe you'll agree with her a little bit more. Norman Burwalder was a 66-year-old man from Ontario, Canada. He was the chairman of the Canadian Exotic Animal Owners Association. This was an advocacy group all about making sure people are allowed to own things like lions and tigers as pets. Norman even kept his own exotic feline, a Siberian tiger. But this scary animal did not come without many problems, which almost went against his organization's case for allowing people to keep tigers as pets. One day, a young boy went to his house to take a photo with his tiger, but this ended in the tiger mauling the boy. Naturally, his neighbors were terrified. They petitioned for a new law to be created prohibiting him and others from owning tigers and lions. This went to court and the judge surprisingly ruled in Norman's favor, but it did not take long for Norman's luck to change. A few years later, he entered his tiger's cage to feed it and was mauled. Sadly, he did not survive. It's ironic that if he'd lost that court case, he would still be alive to this day. But I guess he took the saying live free or die very literally. Maybe it is best to live a shorter amount of time by your principles. Black Widow. This terrifying story shows the dangers of hoarding. Mark Vogel was a 30-year-old hoarder from Germany. He would almost never leave his home and not allow anyone to visit. Not that anyone would even want to. That's because Vogel was a collector of exotic animals and insects. He collected poisonous reptiles, frogs and snakes, and also many spiders too. He would even collect insects such as termites. But one day his neighbors smelled something strange, and it wasn't merely the insects and animals. When cops entered his residence, they were stunned. They saw something straight out of Indiana Jones. Mark's body was being eaten by around 200 spiders. Lizards, snakes, and thousands of termites also had joined in. The scariest part, there were bugs coming from his eyes, mouth, and nose. I'm sorry I even had to tell you guys that. Mark Vogel lived for many years among all of these animals. So, what went wrong? Well, investigators found the culprit was his Black Widow spider. The spider that he'd named Bettina had bitten him. This caused him to pass away. After several days, the insects and animals got hungry and escaped their cages, and promptly began eating Mark. Hungry dogs. Dogs are a man's best friend, and are normally not dangerous at all. That is, unless you mistreat your dogs on purpose or by accident. This was the case with one man named Andre Lumboga. In 2011, Andre went on vacation, and instead of putting them in a doggy daycare or getting someone to feed them, he totally forgot all about them. He was away for 2 weeks, meaning his 9 dogs were getting very hungry and thirsty. When he returned home, his neighbors noticed something strange. His luggage had been left outside his house, and it stayed there for many days after he'd returned. They called the cops and police went to investigate. But when they entered Andre's residence, they realized what had happened. The dogs, who were incredibly hungry, ate him as soon as he returned home. There were only 7 dogs left, as the 2 smaller ones had been eaten by the bigger dogs. This just goes to show that you should always look after your pet. Dogs are incredibly loyal, but if you treat them badly, then the tables will turn. Teddy bear. Kellyanne Waltz was a connoisseur of very dangerous pets. She looked after a tiger, a mountain lion, and also a bear. Her 350-pound bear was named Teddy. Kelly was not trying to remake Noah's Ark. Instead, she just loved very scary and unusual pets. But her love for these animals was not repaid. One day she was cleaning out Teddy's cage. She would do this by throwing food to distract him, and then while he was eating, clean out the cage. But instead of the food Kelly was throwing, Teddy wanted to eat something else. That was his owner. Teddy began eating Kelly. Scott Castone, her neighbor, actually saw this happen. Using a rifle, he tried to sedate the bear, but to no avail. Sadly, 37-year-old Kelly did not make it. Her neighbor Scott said that her exotic animals were never a problem, and she had done the same cage cleaning procedure thousands of times. It just goes to show that animals are incredibly unpredictable. You never know what might set them off and cause you a world of trouble. Famous chimp. We're pretty used to seeing animals on movies and TV shows. These are normally very well trained animals which are not a threat to humans. But just because an animal has been in the media does not make it a totally safe domesticated animal. Carla Nash learned this the hard way. One day she was visiting her friend Sandra Herold. Sandra owned a chimpanzee called Travis. Travis was a rather famous chimp. He had appeared in TV commercials for Coca-Cola and Old Navy. He was normally very well behaved, but when he saw Carla, this all changed. Travis jumped on Carla, biting and scratching her. Eventually, police arrived and had to neutralize the chimp. Carla had to have facial reconstruction surgery, and also live in an assisted living community because of her injuries. Medicate Diablo. Amanda Ruth owned several snakes. This included one very large boa constrictor, but it turned out the most dangerous snake she owned would be a python named Diablo. One day Amanda had to medicate Diablo. She tried to give him medicine with a syringe, but as she was doing this, the python bit her. Sadly, this took her life. And when her husband returned home, he found her under a sign that said medicate Diablo. But now it's time to make your voice heard. Comment below which was the scariest pet on this list. If you want some more amazing videos, then check out my second channel. But as always, thanks for watching. There are some more videos on screen right now. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to Top 10s.